hi everybody. I hope that you can hear me and see me. Drop a little note in the chat if you can. I'm Becca, by the way. And Kristi's, she's on her way in. She's on her way in. Okay, good. Yes, you can hear. Awesome. Thank you, Della. I'm Becca, and I'm one of the two hosts. This is my partner, Kristi. Hi, he's coming up. Hey, Claire. Yay, Claire's here. Nice. All right. Let's, we'll go ahead and let me move this over so they can see you as well. All right. Let's go ahead and I'll share my screen. So this is companion planting. Let's see. Okay, so I want to make sure that you guys can see the PowerPoint. It should be a yellow and blue screen. Okay, awesome. Good. Can you guys hear me okay too? All right, all good. All right, thank you. Okay, great. So this is companion planting. And so let's just talk a little bit about what companion planting is. All right, so what is companion planting? So anytime you're planting two or more plants in close proximity in order to support their growth, to feed them, or to manage pests. So there's a lot of different benefits to companion planting. And that's really what Kristi and I try to do when we go out to people's houses, is really try to plant the things that, one, people want, and two, the things that are going to help them do the best to manage their growth. And then there's always, we always talk about cover crop as well. So those are some examples we'll get more into about feeding for your plants. And then, of course, managing pests. There's some really great plants out there that really help manage pests. All right, so benefits of companion planting. So, of course, there's the supportive. So an example of those would be corns, beans, and squash, which we'll talk about in more depth. Tomato and cilantro, eggplant and lettuce. So those are three examples of a supportive. So the corn, in other words, corn and beans can crawl up the corn stalk, and that kind of helps it grow and helps it to flower. And then, of course, if you have two flowering plants, you're bringing pollinators to the garden. So for tomato and cilantro, those are two things that help each other grow, because cilantro really loves a lot of shade. Tomato, of course, gets really huge and big, so cilantro can kind of hide underneath. It also likes to be wet, but it's not really one of those that likes, like the tomato will suck up most of the moisture, but it also gives it enough moisture to kind of just keep it like, just drinking a little bit at a time. And then eggplant and lettuce. So eggplant's another one that kind of, it gets really big. And the lettuce also is one of those that likes a lot of shade and moisture as well. So, Kristi, you want to talk about soil health?
About soil?
All right, no.
All
right, so soil health. So that's one of the for companion planting, Kristi and I really recommend cover crops. And so in cover crops, what we're trying to do is we're trying to feed and put nutrients back into the soil. So really good example of cover crops. And you have to be careful. So if you order your own cover crop from like Urban Farmer or even online, those they can have different things that grow during different seasons best, right? So for example, cereal rye, vetch, and clover. Cereal rye grows much better in the fall. Vetch, which gives really pretty little, you've seen them around, like they're around everywhere. They have like little purple, like feathery flowers on them.
And ferny kind of leaves.
And they're ferny. So they kind of, they do a lot better in the fall. So right now we're seeing them to where they're nice and they're blooming. So they've had a little bit of a dormant season. And now they're ready to go. And then clover is one of those that you can plant. So certain types of clover do better in the fall than in the spring. So the clover that we're talking about for fall would be like crimson clover, and that one has kind of like more of a pointy flower, and it's really bright red. That's coming up and flowering really nicely, and so you can kind of cut those and use that for tea if you want. It's really good for women's health. But right now we're using a sorry, my voice cracked. We're using a cover crop that is clover. It's like a mixed clover, so it's like white, pink, and red. So that one's more of a summertime or springtime clover. And the reason that those are really good for soil health is because they're all called nitrogen fixers. So they all add nitrogen back into the soil. So even something as simple as like a little clover plant, all you need to do to repair the soil for, if you've had, like, let's just say you had like a tomato growing, right? Tomatoes take a lot of nutrients from the soil. So when you have this cover crop growing, you're just letting it grow. If you want to take the flower, you just snip it and take that. And then what you can do is just kind of cut the leaves down. So Kristi likes to say chop and drop. So chopping those down and putting them kind of like mulching them back into the soil will really help fix up your nitrogen, and you don't have to do as much tilling or add any more manure or soil or anything like that.
And it works like a living mulch essentially too. It's just consistently bringing, it works differently than grass. Grass is just taking, I didn't realize the screen was on. Grass will just like soak up so much water, and it also just depletes everything of nutrients. And with cover cropping, there's mixtures of grasses and clovers and different nitrogen fixers in it that just is constantly giving back with its root system. But like Becca said, chopping and dropping, if you want to keep it low, you just chop it and you drop it like you would like leaves are on the ground, and it just breaks down and gives even more of those nutrients back that maybe your produce is taking from the ground.
See, Kristi's starting to warm up now.
I get camera shy, y'all. I freak out as soon as I know people are watching, but I just need to ease in.
All right. So the next benefit of companion planting is, of course, pest management. So for instance, melons and squash. So melons and squash are really susceptible, especially in the springtime, to what are those little? They're squash borers, right? And so they're like little worms,
yes.
like really tiny little worms that go into the vine of the squash and melon, and they'll eat the inside of the plant, and they'll start right at the root. So a really good way to combat or prevent, I guess, your squash from even getting those is to do a lot of flowering herbs. So anything like dill, and also like really like strong scented. So like marigolds, dill, fennel, anything like that.
Onions.
Yeah. Onions and garlic, and also dill is. Well, I said dill already. Yeah.
I like dill though. You can't say dill enough. Like, pickle it.
Yeah.
The flowers are awesome in the garden coming up right now too.
Yeah, anything that really just like is very like even rosemary. I think rosemary takes up a lot of space, so it's not really a great companion to melons and squash. But if anything that has that smell, it's just gonna repel all the pests. So,
and also, how you can tell if you've got a squash borer beetle is toward the base. This isn't a good example. This one's super healthy, but toward the base, it gets kind of brown and callousy in there, and you'll see that it's kind of splitting, and your overall health of the plant will start yellowing and just not be happy. And if you crack open that little callus area, you'll see like a little worm in there. That area is that plant's pretty much, it's a goner. So I would uproot it. I traditionally don't like to uproot things, even with like produce and food that I'm growing in the garden. As soon as I'm done with the harvest, I like to chop that as well, so that the root system can decompose back into the soil putting back whatever it took from the soil to produce whatever squash it needed, or tomato, or whatever else. So it's just putting the nutrients back into the soil once again. And that's it.
Thank you. Oh, Claire, I got your message. So that brings me to a good point. Like, just for those of you that don't really know us, so Claire says, JoJo just told me chop and drop. Okay.
That's
and
right.
so JoJo is a student at the Circle School, and Miss Kristi is the gardening teacher at the Circle School. So, and that's one of her catchphrases, right? Chop and drop.
Chop and drop.
They just put in a hugel and they're getting ready to plant on it. And so it's full of cover crop. I don't know if we posted pictures on our Instagram or Facebook of it, but
we will.
It's really awesome. And it's a perfect example of right now, like how you can restore your soil. Like, even though nothing's gone in there, putting that living mulch back into the soil just is going to make that soil just that much better.
It keeps the soil so much more alive. Without any type of root systems or something consistently giving back to it, it depletes it. And that's a whole nother workshop or video. We'll talk soil health more.
Yes. Also, if you guys have specific questions, we'll answer them at the end. But also, we can definitely take a look here too if we see them. We'll try to get to them. All right, and then the last one for pest management, an example. There's tons of them out there, but calendula and broccoli. So one of the things that broccoli is really susceptible to is aphids, and those are those little. They look like little pieces of rice, and you see them up like everywhere. They get on kale, they get on chard, like pretty much anything green, and I think the brassicas are really susceptible to them.
Yes.
You always find them underneath the leaves. Anyway, those. One, ladybugs can eat those, and praying mantises as well. But if you don't have that, if you don't have that biodiversity of living things in your garden, calendula is a really good combatant for aphids.
And so is onions too. And dill, once again, that helped big time. We did a little experiment with our winter garden. In one of the beds, we did a mismatch of different brassicas. So we did broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage, and didn't really put too many flowers or anything else. It was just a brassica bed. And then one of the beds, we did a total companion planting with only one kind of brassica, because FYI, when planting brassicas, you don't want to mix them all together, because they compete with each other too much for the nutrients. They all need the same kind of nutrients. So we did one bed with just cabbages and a whole bunch of onions and garlic and dill and fennel, and we didn't have one single cabbage worm or any aphids on that bed. So it really does make a difference if it's biodiversity. And I like to call it kind of like when we're working out, we have the best results whenever we're kind of doing some muscle confusion things. And it's the same thing when gardening. It's kind of like a confusion to the pests, and they just don't come, and it overpumps the soil to just keep generating all the microbes and all the beautifulness underground.
I've only accidentally ever planted calendula near my broccoli, but the reason that I put that there was because I didn't realize that until recently that the calendula, if you guys ever plant that, it's a bright orange flower, and it's really great for skin ailments and things like that. So it has a sap on there that's a really great healing sap underneath the bloom.
Nice.
And what it does is it attracts aphids, right? But it also like gets them stuck in the sap. So anyway, pretty cool.
It is cool.
Yeah. So some examples of companion planting, and I have some better pictures of this, but examples of companion planting, and these are kind of ancient. So like Three Sisters is a really great example of companion planting. We did an Instagram takeover for Tortilla Press. Shout out Nydia. We did an Instagram takeover, and I did a small video on companion planting, but it's a very informative, and as well, it's a very great, like it's a wonderful example of companion planting, because the three sisters, of course, are corns, bean, and squash. And the corn, of course, it grows really tall, and the beans use the corn pole to climb up
For support.
But then you have squash as well that's integral in that. And squash, what it does is it not only does it shade the ground, but it also chokes out weeds.
Mm-hmm.
And the beans, like, they'll add nitrogen back in. They're another example of a nitrogen fixer. So they will add nitrogen back into the soil.
Which
once the
corn
harvest is
really
up.
needs to.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, because your corn, I mean, that just really depletes. It's a big crop, and it depletes the soil really quickly. So having something that can regenerate your soil will save you a lot of time and money over time.
Mhm.
And then, of course, like, people like to do salsa garden, so tomatoes, cilantro, jalapenos, and onions. And then, like, this is a crazy one.
Throw in a marigold or two, though. Always throw in splashes of colors, and usually flowers, they have some sort of scent that the pests don't like, and it does. It adds a little flair and color to it too.
Mm-hmm. Another extensive. This is a really extensive one called banana circle, and this one is. I think it's been used a lot in, like, more jungly and Polynesian type areas. So you would start with 2 banana trees, some taro root in the middle, and in the middle, like, you dig like a really, really deep hole, and you put your mulch and just like all your compost into that hole. You plant the taro root around there, so it feeds off of that. The banana tree also feeds off of the compost. Then you plant lemongrass, which is considered a living mulch, and really tasty too. Sweet potato and cassava. And so cassava, I don't know if you guys, sometimes people use cassava as flour, but cassava is like a really short and bushy tree. So it doesn't mind being underneath the banana tree. So it loves that shade. But that's, like, really extensive. Like, I know that a lot of you guys, we just wanted to give that example, but that's really a better example of what's called food foresting.
Mm-hmm.
So that can get really extensive, and putting like raw compost in the middle of a deep hole in your yard. Some of you guys might go for it. I would go for it.
I do.
But yeah, I know we're not going to get into that. So
it makes me feel better than throwing it in the trash. I don't like the way that feels.
Yeah. So here's the example of 3 sisters. So of course you have and you can do, like, in your home, of course, you can do whatever you want. This one really goes into the whole, first of all, treating your soil and planting. So the Native Americans would plant fish. Then they start with the corn, let the corn grow up just a little bit. Then you plant your beans once the corn is, like, I don't know. I think this is probably tall enough. Yeah. So, like, a good example, I don't know if you guys can see this. So here's an example of a corn plant that's probably big enough to go, one, in the ground, and then also you can start your beans around this.
But when they're about like 8 inches to 12 inches tall, then you'll want to directly seed beans around the base of the corn. I usually do in a shape of a triangle. I don't know, I figure that's kind of spaced out enough to where the beans aren't competing and choking out either too much.
I have mine in a hugel, and I mean, I don't really, the mound is a really good idea if you want to do it in a circle, but you don't have to. You can do it in a line. You can do it whatever way you want. Just as long as, and so then you bring in the squash, just as long as you're having that close proximity with those plants is what is really key and integral. Because obviously you don't want to put the beans too far away from the corn. It needs to be able to grab onto the corn stalk. And the same thing with the squash. You don't want to put it too far away from the corn, because then it's not really going to choke out any of those weeds that might take extra nutrients.
And something else too, like when you're planting your corn as well, like you want them pretty close together as well, because the little tassels that start to come out on the corn stalk, that the wind is what pollinates the corn to get the ears. So when they're close together, they can mix and mingle and pollinate. And FYI, did you know, if you guys have ever seen a little baby ear of corn coming up, all the little hairs that are coming out of it? Did you know that every single one of those little hairs is a kernel of corn on the cob?
I didn't know
Once
that.
it-
I
once it
thought you were
grows?
going to say that every single like kernel is that's a flowering. Is that the pollinating? Like one bee has pollinated that, or something like that.
Well, so that's the thing about corn. Corn, is wind pollinated. That's why, like,
Oh yeah. Okay.
that was
Gotcha.
that was part of our original diets before. Actually, honeybees and pollinator bees came over
Okay.
when the Europeans came over, and so
Yeah.
we didn't. That's when our whole entire diet started changing. We started getting more fruits and veggies and things like that once those kind of pollinators came in. So, FYI.
Yeah. Anyway, Three Sisters is really great.
Yes.
And you can make a whole meal out of that and just add in some pork or chicken, do calabasa. All right, let's go to the next one. So let's see. So the next example or the next diagram is Salsa Garden. And this one is a little bit more, I would say it's really fun because it's not really dependent on proximity so much as it is just managing like pests and giving that shade to the cilantro or to your more leafy greens. So like your onions can go in the middle, so that way they are like dispersing the pests a little bit. The peppers are not really, I don't really see too many pests on peppers.
I don't either. It's like they're too hot or something.
Yeah. So those are kind of nice to kind of have in between your tomatoes or around your tomatoes. So that way there's not really that desire, that like, I guess like that attraction. Tomatoes at the edges, only because tomatoes they take up a lot of space. So for every tomato plant, I would, a lot of people want to do, square foot gardening.
Yeah.
But for tomatoes, I mean, you need at least like a good 2 to 3 feet in preparation for how much yield you're going to get and how crazy big these tomatoes get.
Square foot gardening, meaning you wouldn't have a whole line maybe of them, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It would just be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
I like to interdisperse. I usually throw like in an 8x4 bed or something, like max two tomatoes.
Mm-hmm. So, and this one has chives on it, and I'll just give you guys a little bit of information on why. So you can use onions as your chives, right? But then if you clip those, if you clip the leaves before you are able to harvest the onion, then the bulb won't grow. Mm-hmm. So keep your onion in the ground until you're absolutely ready to use it, like ready to use the bulb. So if you want to do chives, you can do chives, like just have a little separate area for chives. And then cilantro, of course, remember to try to keep it in a shady spot, preferably closer to your tomatoes, so that it's getting a lot of water, but the tomatoes like simultaneously sucking up the water, so it's not too wet. And then I just threw in this fun thing for the banana circle, because this is basically like what you would do is just, like I said, just dig a big hole, put all your waste, compost, mulch, anything like branches. And then here we have, in the really close to the compost pile, you would have your taro root. And then the banana circle or the banana trees on the outside. And then next to the banana trees, you would have lemongrass, which that's another one it's a great one to chop and drop with because it's a living mulch. And then your cassava on the other side, where you would get the most shade, because they like shade and they're also really shrubby and don't grow as tall as the banana trees.
I love it.
Yeah. And you can do the same thing. So like the ultimate idea with permaculture, which is what Kristi and I really try to talk about with our clients. Excuse me, my eyes watering. What we try to talk about is using whatever you have in your yard and complementing it. So if you've got pecan trees in your yard, you can plant, blackberries.
Yes.
Or, even like blueberries are a little bit harder to do in Texas. It's possible. But blackberries are really great to plant around your pecan trees. Around your blackberries, then add in your herbs like borage or lemongrass.
Mhm.
Any number of herbs can go well with blackberries. But it just really creates a great system, and it continues to bring in pollinators. It continues to just, you want to attract a certain amount of pests, because then other insects will come and eat those, and other insects are beneficial for your yard and your.
You're imitating nature. You're helping to rehab or build up an ecosystem. So that's what I like to do. I like to check out what's going on, and you can always microclimate things too. That's what I like about the banana circle. You don't have to be somewhere tropical to do that. You can create an environment that is more humid and shady, and make that happen.
All right, so here's here. Okay, Miss Kristi really loves flowers. We just did a job a couple hours ago, and it was filled with flowers and pollinators. This is what this person, they wanted a cottage garden, so it was really nice. We don't often get a chance. Most people want vegetables or a lot of pollinators or things they don't really have to take care of very much, but flowers are great companions to add into your garden, even if you are doing productive gardens like vegetable gardens. So nasturtium is one that goes really well, and nasturtiums are right here in the corner up here. So nasturtiums are really beautiful. They're also very tasty. They taste a little bit like horseradish, kind of spicy, and they go great in salads. But they work well paired with broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cucumbers, tomatoes, pumpkins, potatoes, pretty much anything. They're super fun.
And they're a great snack while you're gardening too.
Mm-hmm.
They're great for the digestion. Kind of bitter.
Yeah. On the bottom we have alyssum, or is that how you pronounce it? Alyssum?
Yeah. Alyssum.
And those have really cute little clusters of flowers, and I think they come in blues sometimes. I've seen them in blue. Really cute.
Like powdery purpley blue.
Yeah, they don't grow very tall at all. They really stay pretty close to the ground. And they work really well with peas, lettuce, spinach, geranium, and other herbs.
And they're great for potato bugs to plant around your potato mounds.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then calendula. So here's a picture of a calendula flower. And like I said earlier, the calendula bulb has like a sticky sap, which is really great for your skin. Terrible for aphids. So if you're trying to combat aphids, you can plant it around cucumbers, tomatoes, peas, carrot, asparagus, any kind of leafy green spring salad variety. And then marigold, which is an herb, but it's mostly, we see it a lot for Day of the Dead or Dia de los Muertos. And that one is really, really great at combating cabbage worms. Mm-hmm. So planting it around your cabbage in the fall, squash, any pumpkins, cucumbers too, if you're still growing cucumbers in the fall, and cauliflower.
And those are great for your kind of bitter as well. Good for your get your enzymes going.
I put them in a tea. I don't eat them just whole like that. You can. You can even do that with calendula. You can eat it like that. Mm-hmm. And then let's see here. So we're talking about herbs. I think I love herbs.
Yeah, you do.
I love growing all kinds of herbs. I love even if they don't flower for me, you can still use the leaves, and so like they're just wonderful. They really companion well with anything. I love them. And they do really well. Like they don't need a whole lot of space. Like they're not big personality. They're not show offs or anything.
No.
Tomatoes a big show off plant. I like tomatoes, but they
kind of like to be under the leaves and behind the scenes.
So really great herbs. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but cucumbers are great paired with dill. And I mean, not only do you use dill to make your pickles, right? If you are into canning, so it tastes great. but it also is going to give that strong smell and repel pests. Also really great around corn, lettuce, onion, cabbage, anything in the cabbage family. Comfrey. Comfrey is a nitrogen fixer. So if you look at the corner, they have really huge leaves. And what'll happen is if you don't use the leaves for your salves or tea or something like that, you can just chop it and drop it and then put it back into the soil.
Wonderful
So,
nitrogen.
And I think, so comfrey is one of the few things that you can also pair with strawberries. Strawberries, as small as they are, they require a lot of space and a lot of attention, but they do really well with comfrey. And part of that is because comfrey is such a great nitrogen fixer. You can also, with a lot of herbs, since they are nitrogen fixers, a lot of them, you can take it and you can also do this with banana leaves, but you take your leaves and you ferment them for 3 days into like a gallon, like your watering can, right? Just put them in a gallon of water. And then on the 3rd day, you can take all the leaves out or the banana peels, and you have like a magic fertilizer.
Yeah.
So not to drink, but
No.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Next one is basil. So basil goes really well with tomatoes, asparagus, oregano, peppers, and also, basil is really great paired with like eating tomatoes and using it on your pizzas or using it for pestos or things like that.
It's one of my favorite little snacks in the garden too. When I'm gardening, grab a little cherry tomato and wrap the basil leaf around it. It's the yummiest little garden taco.
I like your story about how to keep your basil flowering. I mean, not flowering, but to keep it from flowering and to keep it giving you big, delicious leaves.
So with the Italian basil, once you see it flowering, if you're using it, you don't want it to flower. So I usually pinch it off from maybe the 3rd set of leaves down, the 3rd node down from the flower. I'll just pinch it off, and you can just put that in some water, and most likely it'll root. But with any type of herbs, you always want to pinch off the bigger leaf off of it. We don't have any. You just want to pinch off that. You want to harvest the bigger leaves so that it keeps on giving leaves, and keep it from flowering.
Yeah.
Is that it?
No.
Thai basil, the purple basil, that's a fantastic pollinator, and you can actually let that one flower and still use its leaves. It won't turn bitter or change the taste of it.
I always see I see a ton of pollinators on my Thai basil.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one.
Mm-hmm. And it's nice I like the Thai basil too, like in the summertime, snip some off and put it in your little summer flower arrangement. Yeah. It smells good too.
And then the last one is borage. Borage is one that's really great with berries of any kind, save strawberries. Mm-hmm. So like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, if you're brave enough to grow those. Blackberries, I mean, it'll grow anywhere, but it'll really help attract aphids. So tomatoes go well with borage, squash, cucumbers, strawberry, berry bushes. And borage has those little, they're like a blue purplish color flower, and those taste just like cucumber.
They're so good.
And they're really great, just to put in a tea or just in your water to let it infuse for a little bit. It's very beautiful. It's got those little spiny things along the side, so don't mess with it too much, but you can pick the flowers off pretty safely.
And borage is fantastic for helping to build up your soil as well. They have deep tap roots, so that's good. Deep tap roots, almost like dandelions and things like that, and like a pecan tree or tap roots. Anyways, when they have deep tap roots, they're helping to go as deep as possible into the soil, pulling minerals up to the soil surface and pulling water closer to the surface for some of the other root systems that can't get down and aren't as strong as those mining type roots.
Pretty much all Herbs are great companions. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just coming towards the end of this, but again, we'll answer any questions that you guys have. So just a few things to be mindful of when you're companion planting. I don't think we ever say like you can't plant this here, right?
No.
You hear a lot of like even in the Farmer's Almanac, you say like they say cucumbers hate tomatoes or something. Like people plants don't hate anything.
No.
What happens is that like cucumbers, they need a ton of space. They also need a lot of water. They need a ton of nutrients, right? So if you have it near a tomato, that's not saying that the tomatoes is not going to grow or the cucumber is not going to grow. It's just you create an environment where you're having to like feed a lot and you're having to water like extra, but they're going to grow. They're going to grow. So just be mindful when you're planting things. If you want like flowers somewhere, it'll probably work. It'll work to bring all the pollinators to your vegetables. Just keep in mind like how big is this plant going to get? So things like squash, tomato, cucumbers, those are all really big personality. Even eggplant has a really big characteristic. So it wants to, it's not that it's like unfriendly. It just gets along a little bit better with things that are not so big man on campus, I guess. What is it commonly used for? So when we're planting things, like for instance, tomatoes, are you planting it for a salsa garden? You know, are you planting it to make salsa? Are you planting it to eat with, you know, like Kristi said, like basil and what is that? What is that salad with the balsamic vinegar?
Oh man,
is it capri? I'm sorry.
Caprese salad.
Caprese salad.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and you know, what are you using? What are you using your plants for? You know, just keep those things in mind. Does it like sun or shade? So an example that we haven't really talked about is carrots. Carrots like a lot of shade. They're not very picky. So putting carrots underneath your tomatoes every year or every season, you'll get a really good yield, I guess, of carrots because they're okay with just hanging out in the shade. Doesn't need a shit ton of water. So
Play and experiment, you know, especially as we're rolling into summer, it's going to get sunnier and hotter and things like that. I think it's just important to just remember to play and have fun and use your other plants as support. Mammoth sunflowers are fantastic sun breaks. For instance, if you happen to have an area that is like blazing sun, there's no shade, plant a few mammoth sunflowers. That'll bring some shade and it'll be great seeds for the birds, and they're happy to look at.
So, and another example too of like what are you using this plant for is, like for instance, we've done a lot of native gardens lately. There's a ton of native pollinator plants that are going to grow to about, you know, anywhere from like 5 feet around to 4 feet tall, right? So when you're thinking about what you want to put in your garden or what you want to put in your front yard or anything like that, just be mindful of like, okay, well, if I get this, what was a good one? If I get this big like plumbago plant, like I'm not going to put anything like a tomato next to it, right? Like, I mean, you could, right? Because you're thinking probably like the pollinators will come and that'll be great for it. But you just want to give everything the right amount of space. So yeah, we're not going to tell you no. But
and when nature starts coming in, the birds start coming in and pecking at your tomatoes. You know what I like to do? I like to set up places for them to eat and drink and do their thing. You have to work with them because they're you can't get them to go away. It's part of nature, and they're just getting the tomato because they're needing a drink. They're needing some sugars and things like that. And I also use the birds too as pest management sometimes too. I learned that if you throw some bird seed out into the garden, they'll come down to the garden to get the seeds. And while they're down getting the seeds, they'll see that little aphid or they'll see that little caterpillar on your plants, and they'll peck at that. So that's part of companion planting for me too. Like just being aware of all the environments and surroundings and try to imitate it and work with it.
Mm-hmm.
Have fun.
Yeah. So if you need any more resources on what goes good with what, you can visit us on Facebook or Instagram at Salsa Gardening, and we're usually available through any one of those messenger applications. Or if you just want to go on our website and email us, or if you guys have our numbers, text us. We will try to get back with you as soon as we can. We love answering questions like that. Also, a great resource is just the Permaculture Research Institute. That's a lot of what Kristi and I try to promote as far as sustainability in the South Texas area, especially. And then, of course, Yanawana Herbolarios. They're a really great resource on herbs. And, y'all know I love herbs.
And SATX Permaculture.
SATX Permaculture. I'm sorry,
Yes.
I didn't put them down. Check them out. And we have the donate button open. So this, of course, was a free event for us. But any donations that we get tonight will go straight to Yanawana. They're a really amazing company or organization. They help our homeless population here in San Antonio through herbal medicine. So they're wonderful. So now we can take some questions if you guys have any specific questions. And we'll try. I don't know exactly how to share people here, but I'll try my best. If not, just answer in the.
This is our first run.
Yeah. We're using.
Thank you guys for showing up.
No questions.
That's it. Bueller.
All right.
Well, fantastic. Happy Friday, y'all. Tomorrow's Beltane. Enjoy something out in nature. Play in your garden.
We're also happy to answer weird questions as well, not related to companion planting.
Mm-hmm.
Type it in the chat.
Okay. What? Thank you so much. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, Claire.
Happy Friday, Claire.
I was noticing we have a person from
Della, thank you.
From Connecticut. I didn't know that we reached Connecticut.
What?
Yeah.
Shout out, Connecticut.
I don't know if she's here right now.
I have these purple potatoes that I can't get to fruit. I don't know what I am doing wrong.
Purple potatoes. So I would ask you where you got them from. That would be my first question.
I think you have to bury the tips. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just start by saying that for potatoes. Oh, okay. So you just bought them at HEB. Okay, so just be very careful with, HEB is a great local, they support local agriculture a lot, but sometimes they get some stuff that comes from weird places. So, so the thing with potatoes is to take the potato and you cut the tip, right, or cut it in half. If you can try to get them to sprout first, just out, in a paper bag or something, try to get them to sprout first before you put them in the ground. You want to put the tips facing upward, and the half that you cut, put that directly in the soil, cover that up, and then once they do start growing, continue to cover them.
They start growing little green sprigs.
Mm-hmm. So then they do take a little bit of time. Sometimes they'll go straight to flower, depending on the kind of potato they are. But if you keep covering them, they're going to keep giving.
You're going to keep putting out the potatoes.
Yeah. So you want to keep covering them as much as you can, even if you think that they're drowning. Just keep covering them, and they'll grow.
And sometimes, some potatoes, if you got it from the produce section, some potatoes just don't regrow. They won't put out eyes to be potted. And I don't know why. I have my theories, but
they do a lot of
that issue.
Yeah, they do a lot of loose and sandy soil.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't need a whole lot of water.
They don't need to be too wet. Oh, I usually just put them on top of 3 to 4 inches. We actually just ran a little experiment recently. Some of my kiddos, and we cut some of them in half, And then we cut some of them in half and dipped them into sulfur powder to get them to callus. And then we just left some of them that were whole. And we put them in different sacks. The ones that we just straight up cut, we couldn't get those to eye. But we also, they were old from like the last September or something. And we couldn't, they weren't starting to put out the little eyes that potatoes usually do when they've been in your cupboard too long. And then the ones that we dipped in sulfur and got the cut part to callus, those are growing fantastically. And then the whole potatoes that had the eyes already coming off of them, those are growing great as well. So to answer the question, I found success just like putting about like 3-4 inches of dirt on the bottom of the area that the container that we'll plant them on. And then and then we lay them down and then we cover them with dirt again, maybe, I don't know, an inch or two. And then water them in. And once the green shoots start coming up, they're about 4 to 8 inches. I'll cover them again and just keep that process going until you're done.
Yeah.
Until you decide. How do you know when to harvest your potatoes? I don't know.
So potatoes are ready to harvest either once they've flowered, which if they've flowered, they probably have not given you very much. But also if they once they yellow and they kind of fall over.
Like
That's
onions.
that's when you can harvest them.
That's what I've done. I didn't know if there's some other symbol.
Also, I just would like to know if anybody.
Thank you.
Okay, here's a question here. I'm sorry. Is there a specific type of soil herbs like versus the vegetable plants? So vegetables are really picky about what kind of soil they like. So you need to get like a really good soil compost mix if you can, if you're just starting out. Herbs, not so much. I would say the only really picky herb that I know of is probably lavender, which likes a lot of dry, like sandy soil.
Mm-hmm. They don't like wet. They don't like to be wet either. They can do very little.
Okay, there's another question. So with the potatoes, when you say cover, are you covering the entire plant? That's popped up. You're covering kind of like almost to its neck, like right here, like right. So just enough for the leaf to come up.
Yeah,
right?
they're long, like stemmy stalks, and then it kind of has like a little canopy of leaves a little bit. So I typically just cover the stalk and leave like the leaves.
And every place that you cover, so that's going to root out and give you a potato. Ideally, yes. Okay, let's see. Do herbs prefer a specific soil rather than plant? Okay, yeah, I think we answered that. So perfect for my, this is my brother. Okay,
Cool.
I don't know. I'd have to see your yard now, especially after this rain now. I'm not sure. It's probably, you're probably just sitting on rocks right now. Right? Okay, are we going to do a podcast about hydroponics?
Ooh.
That's a good one. Actually, I was going to ask if anybody had any requests. Please put those in the chat. We would like to continue doing classes. We would like to do one on biodynamics, about plants and astrology, women's health, teas, herbal salves, maybe.
Give us some ideas of what you guys would be interested in.
Yeah. No, there's no such thing as a silly question, Diamond.
No,
Thank you for asking. Soil health. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We'd have to get Kate from Compost Queens out here to do a guest speaker thing on her compost. Okay.
Soil health, so important. I mean, because when you're gardening and farming, you're basically gardening and farming your soil.
Mm-hmm.
With crappy soil, you don't get the abundance, and you're constantly building it up and building it up. And that's the wonderful thing about companion planting. And I love no-tilling because it's not something that's commonly talked about, of the whole entire world of an ecosystem under the ground. I'm going to dork out about this forever. So that's definitely a wonderful class I would love to partake in. Yes. To
right.
Soil health, maybe herb care, how to dry herbs. Yes.
So I'm just going to, I recently read about gardening with the moon.
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely want to do one of those. It's a little bit more complex than people give it credit for.
Biodynamic gardening and farming.
Yeah.
Maria Thun, she's one of the most reliable resources I know of.
Yeah.
I've been following her and reading her books and calendars for well over 12 years.
Yeah. Just a little note about herb care. So if you want to do teas, you can dry your herbs, right? Just gather them in a bunch, tie them with a little bit of twine, dry them up for about 3 days. You can use herbs that way and store them, or you can just use them fresh. And I think the fresh ones are the best. I think that is the best thing to use for your teas, even for your tinctures, if you're into making tinctures.
I love to munch on them while I'm gardening. So good.
Oh, it's
And then
she was asking who it was.
Oh.
So for biodynamics, it's this book is called Gardening for Life. I don't know if you can see that.
It's kind of a how-to book a little bit and goes like more in depth of the rhyme and reasons of biodynamic planting and farming.
Yeah, this is by Maria Thun. And Maria Thun, she's a really big, I think that she is a lifetime gardener, but she also was really influenced by some teachings by Rudolf Steiner, who, gave us Waldorf education. There's a lot of really interesting things that she has to say, especially about, when to even like mess with the dirt.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a good one. We'll do that. We'll do that one.
We like Wee Moon too. The
Yes.
Wee Moon calendar. That's a fantastic one too.
Wee Moon.
Wee Moon.
It's got a lot. It's great for women, but it's also got some really great
Fantastic art.
biodynamic stuff. And the art's really great too. Okay. We'll take it off. We're about to stop though.
What is it?
Somebody was saying he wants
Hey.
to say so. Hey. Okay, Josie Jeffrey is the author of the book on companion planting I have. I think it's from the 80s. Josie Jeffrey, okay. I don't think I've ever read anything by him. Cool. I will check it out though.
Josie Jeffrey. Josie Jeffrey. Okay.
We'll keep it in the chat. I think.
Oh, okay. We get to see this later.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Any other questions? We're probably gonna go off pretty soon.
If y'all are in San Antonio and y'all are driving around, stay home. Be careful. It's rainy.
Let's see if there's any other questions before we sign off. When I dry peppermint plants, part of them turn green, dark green, not looking nice. I would say in that case, you're probably getting a lot of moisture. Mint plants do have a lot of moisture. So sometimes what can happen is it's drying, but it's also kind of drying in a more moist environment. So make sure that you're drying either in like a mesh bag or a sieve or something like that, where it's getting a lot of airflow. Try that. If not, if maybe like sometimes my house, especially in the summertime, is a little bit more humid. So even drying inside can be kind of hard. I would say you can try to do it in like a dehydrator or in the oven. Try that. That way you get a more even dry. That was a good question. I hope that helps. Yeah, sometimes they don't look nice, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with it either. I think it just doesn't look as nice.
Seems like when you usually heat it up in a tea or something too, it turns it funky.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. If you can, please donate so that we can donate money to the Yanawana Herbolarios cause here in San Antonio.
They help out our houseless community with herbal medicine, but they also they restore the land. They're amazing. Check them out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Cheerio.
We're going to end. Bye. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.